Of all the entrepreneurs and innovators of the 21st century, only one man has simultaneously revolutionized the automobile industry, the space industry, and the world of artificial intelligence. His name is Elon Musk. Born not in Silicon Valley, not in the corridors of Harvard or MIT, but in the dusty city of Pretoria, South Africa, a boy who would one day put humans back on the path to the stars. Elon Reeve Musk was born on June 28, 1971, to Mae Musk, a model and dietitian, and Errol Musk, an electromechanical engineer. From his earliest years, it was clear that Elon was different. While other children played outside, young Elon disappeared into books, devouring encyclopedias, science fiction novels, and technical manuals with an almost unsettling intensity. By the age of 9, he had read every book in his school library. By 10, he had taught himself computer programming. And at 12, he wrote and sold his first commercial software, a video game called Blaster, for $500. It was a small sum, but it was the first signal of what was coming. School, however, was not a refuge for young Elon. He was quiet, intensely focused, and socially awkward in ways that made him a target. For years, he endured relentless bullying, once beaten so severely that he was hospitalized. Yet he never stopped reading, never stopped thinking, never stopped dreaming. His parents divorced when he was 10 years old, a fracture that would shape him deeply. Elon chose to live with his father, a decision he would later describe as one of the great mistakes of his life. The relationship was difficult, cold, and at times painful in ways Musk has rarely spoken about publicly. But the experience sharpened something in him, a fierce, almost ferocious self-reliance that would define everything he would later build. At 17, Elon Musk made a decision that would change the course of his life. Determined to avoid mandatory military service in apartheid South Africa, and drawn by an unshakable belief in the promise of America, he left home. He arrived in Canada with almost nothing, moving in with distant relatives, working odd jobs on farms and lumber mills. He would later say that those years taught him something no classroom ever could, that he could endure almost anything. He enrolled at Queen's University in Ontario, then transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in both economics and physics. It was here that Musk first began to crystallize the ideas that would consume the rest of his life. He wrote a thesis on the future of solar energy. He stayed up through the night debating the nature of consciousness, artificial intelligence, and the long-term survival of the human species. These were not idle conversations. For Elon Musk, they were a blueprint. In 1995, Musk was accepted into a prestigious PhD program at Stanford University. He lasted 2 days. The internet was exploding, and Elon Musk was not a man who could sit in a classroom while the world was being rebuilt outside its walls. He withdrew, and with his brother Kimball, founded his first company, Zip2, a web software company that provided city guides for newspapers. 4 years later, Compaq acquired it for over $300 million. Elon Musk's share was $22 million. He was 27 years old. The real journey was just beginning. With his fortune from Zip2, most young men would have bought a mansion, a yacht, a life of leisure. Elon Musk bought a problem. He put $12 million into his next venture, an online financial services company called X.com. It would eventually merge with a competitor and become something the entire world now knows by a different name, PayPal. When eBay acquired PayPal in 2002, Musk walked away with $180 million. He was 30 years old, and he was about to do something that everyone around him thought was insane. Elon Musk had become obsessed with a single question, one that had haunted him since boyhood, staring up at the night sky in Pretoria. Why, he asked, had humanity stopped reaching for the stars? It had been 30 years since the last Apollo mission. NASA's budget had been slashed. The dream of Mars had been quietly shelved. To Musk, this was not just a failure of ambition. It was an existential threat. If humanity remained confined to a single planet, he believed, we were one catastrophic event away from extinction. In 2002, Musk founded Space Exploration Technologies, SpaceX. He invested $100 million of his own money. The goal was audacious to the point of absurdity, to build reusable rockets that could slash the cost of space travel and ultimately to colonize Mars. The aerospace industry laughed. Veteran engineers who had spent careers at Boeing and Lockheed Martin shook their heads. No private company had ever successfully launched a rocket into orbit. Musk, they said, had no idea what he was doing. They were almost right. SpaceX's first 3 rocket launches failed. Each failure consumed millions of dollars. Each failure pushed the company closer to the edge of collapse. After the 3rd failed launch in 2008, Musk had enough funding for one more attempt. He later admitted that those days were the darkest of his life. He was borrowing money from friends to pay his rent. His marriage was falling apart. His companies were hemorrhaging cash. And the world was watching, waiting for him to fail. On September 28, 2008, the Falcon 1 rocket lifted off from a launch site in the Pacific Ocean. For the first time, a privately developed liquid-fueled rocket reached orbit. The SpaceX team erupted in tears. Musk stood before his employees and struggled to find words. "I love you guys," he said. It was enough. NASA took notice, awarding SpaceX a contract worth $1.6 billion. The company that the industry had written off was now keeping the International Space Station supplied. The impossible had become routine. They were almost right. SpaceX's first 3 rocket launches failed. Each failure consumed millions of dollars. Each failure pushed the company closer to the edge of collapse. After the 3rd failed launch in 2008, Musk had enough funding for one more attempt. He later admitted that those days were the darkest of his life. He was borrowing money from friends to pay his rent. His marriage was falling apart. His companies were hemorrhaging cash. And the world was watching, waiting for him to fail. On September 28, 2008, the Falcon 1 rocket lifted off from a launch site in the Pacific Ocean. For the first time, a privately developed liquid-fueled rocket reached orbit. The SpaceX team erupted in tears. Musk stood before his employees and struggled to find words. "I love you guys," he said. It was enough. NASA took notice, awarding SpaceX a contract worth $1.6 billion. The company that the industry had written off was now keeping the International Space Station supplied. The impossible had become routine. Somehow, both companies survived. And then, they began to thrive. The Tesla Model S, launched in 2012, didn't just compete with luxury cars, it dominated them. It was named the safest car ever tested by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Consumer Reports gave it a score of 99 out of 100, the highest rating in the publication's history. The automobile industry, which had dismissed Tesla as a vanity project, suddenly found itself scrambling to catch up. By the early 2010s, Elon Musk had become something the world had not seen in a generation, a genuine industrial pioneer. Not a software billionaire who had gotten rich flipping apps, but a builder. A man who made things, rockets, cars, batteries, solar panels, things that existed in the physical world and changed it in measurable ways. In 2006, he had co-founded SolarCity, a company dedicated to accelerating the adoption of solar energy across America. In 2015, he co-founded OpenAI, a nonprofit research organization aimed at ensuring that artificial intelligence would benefit humanity rather than destroy it. And in 2016, he founded Neuralink, a company working to develop implantable brain-computer interfaces that could one day allow paralyzed patients to walk and healthy humans to communicate with machines at the speed of thought. Critics multiplied with every new venture. Some called him reckless. Some called him a charlatan. Others questioned whether any one man should wield so much influence over so many critical technologies simultaneously. Musk did not argue. He rarely defended himself. He simply worked. Those who knew him described a man who slept on factory floors during production crises, who answered emails at 3 in the morning, who drove his engineers with a ferocity that was, by some accounts, as inspiring as it was exhausting. In May of 2020, SpaceX made history again. The Crew Dragon spacecraft, designed and built by Musk's company, carried 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station. It was the first time American astronauts had launched from American soil in nearly a decade. Musk stood on the launch pad and wept. He was not embarrassed by the tears. He had staked everything, his fortune, his reputation, his sanity, on this moment. He had earned them. And then came Starship, the most ambitious rocket ever built by any nation or any company in the history of human spaceflight. Taller than the Statue of Liberty, capable of carrying 150 tons to orbit, designed not for a single use, but to be launched, landed, and launched again, over and over, like a commercial airliner. The goal was explicit and unchanged from the day Musk had first conceived it: to make humanity multiplanetary, to put human beings on the surface of Mars within his lifetime. But greatness, as it always has, came at a price. Musk's personal life was marked by the same turbulence that had always characterized his professional one. He married twice, divorced twice. He fathered 11 children with multiple partners. He spoke openly and with unusual candor about his struggles with depression, about the loneliness that accompanied the relentless pressure of building companies that were, in his own words, trying to save the world. In 2022, Musk acquired Twitter, one of the world's most influential social media platforms, for $44 billion. He renamed it X. The acquisition was chaotic, controversial, and consumed enormous amounts of his attention and capital. His critics said he had lost his focus. His supporters said he was simply doing what he had always done, disrupting an industry that had grown comfortable and complacent. Today, SpaceX launches more mass to orbit than all other nations and companies on Earth combined. Tesla has sold millions of electric vehicles across the world, fundamentally reshaping an industry that had resisted change for a century. The dream of Mars, once the province of science fiction, is now an engineering project with a timeline, a budget, and a workforce of thousands. Buried within the story of Elon Musk is something larger than the story of one man. It is the story of what becomes possible when someone refuses to accept the limits that the world attempts to impose upon them. When a boy from Pretoria, beaten and bullied and dismissed, looks up at the night sky and decides, not as a fantasy, but as a plan, that he will one day send human beings to another world. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. For the man who dared to dream beyond the boundaries of Earth itself, the odds never really mattered. Only the dream did.